Or not live, but recording.
That was quick. All right, hey, welcome to back. We're back. For, after our hiatus.
We've both been so busy for 3 weeks, 4 weeks straight now that this wasn't really an option.
I don't even know. I don't even know how long it's been. I feel like I haven't had a full rest in a month.
I had a couple of great nights sleep, but I wasn't about to sacrifice that to do this.
Oh, no.
Just saying.
I just feel like I need to catch up. Like I was telling my wife the other day, I just feel like I just need a week to just sleep and not have to be on. You know what I mean? Like football practice is not that long. I mean, it's only 3 hours, but the prep beforehand and then the prep after and all the things that go with it are physically and mentally exhausting. Like it's something.
I can relate. We finished a major turnaround, and for anyone who doesn't know what a turnaround is, it's when a manufacturing plant shuts down to change every single valve in the plant and then do all the other major work and preventative maintenance and open up machines and change bearings, and it's a very long and time consuming process, and they bring in a ton of people to help get it done in a more reasonable time frame. And the people who were running the turnaround, I don't know if they were just too aggressive with their goals or there were some screw ups, right? It's and they were told to order these bolts, bolts for this machine, and they needed 250 of them. And the story I got is that they were told to order them in October, last October, and they didn't get ordered until January. Yeah. And then they issued the PO to South Korea instead of South Carolina. So they ordered them from the wrong place.
I see how you can get those.
Yeah, I mean,
South
Carolina, United States, South Korea, Eastern Sea, right? So one's on the Eastern Seaboard, and one's in the Eastern Sea, so it's the same thing, right? That's what it was. So it's stuff like that, and so we were supposed to be done on the 9th, I think, mechanically complete.
Yeah.
And last week they finally started up. So they were a full week behind on trying to get everything done, which is really bad for something that takes a year to plan.
Yeah. So it's not like y'all are making another thing. It's just kind of one of those maintenance update things.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, there's a lot of project work that went into it. And that was part of the big problem, is that there was this huge project to upgrade transformers, and then the company, there were two things. So the company didn't label the wires when they took everything apart. So then they had to figure out what went to what system. And there's,
man.
And you think about you think about your house wires, right? So that's one system with maybe 50 wires, maybe, right?
So we got a package in the mail the other day at the office, and it had a little motherboard looking thing, little circuit board thing, and 8 wires. And everybody goes, "Do you know what this is?" "No." "Do you know what this is?" "No." What's this too?" "I don't know."
Probably cost $1,000 or something. You guys have no idea.
I have no idea.
You should have just went and sold it on eBay. Some kind of bidding place.
Right. Probably.
Somebody else will know the value of this.
No, I don't think we threw it away, but it was I think we called somebody to come get it. we were like, I don't know enough about anything to do this.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it would be like if you were like ordered a bunch of wires or whatever or something like that and had no idea.
Well, it's more like if you went into your house and you took the breaker box and you disconnected all the wires and you pulled it out and you put a new one in and then you hadn't labeled what anything was. So you couldn't put the wires back.
Oh my god.
And you didn't know which one went to like your garage door or the microwave or whatever. And so we had to figure all of that out. So that was a pretty big delay, as you can imagine. And there were like, I don't know, 1,000 wires or something like that. Like, I wasn't heavily involved in that. I just went and worked on my little compressors, and that was my happy place. I was good there.
Well, what are our topics for the day? There are lots and lots of things to talk about.
I don't know, man. I feel like there's a couple of hot things right now. Israel's number one, kind of what I've seen. I guess they granted the ceasefire. Hamas declared victory, and
did they declare victory or did they declare, "Hey, we're not gonna die"?
I mean, Hamas declared victory was the headline I saw. But
of course, it was the headline that you saw. I know what news you consume.
Probably saw it from Al Jazeera, your favorite news site.
No, my favorite's Jacobin. I don't know what you're talking about. Just kidding. I don't really have a favorite. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen anything like that they declared victory. Just kind of I mean, I guess it's a victory if, your people aren't going to get slaughtered.
Right. I can't read any of these translations because it's not translated. A lot of this is the tweets are in Arabic because they're from people there. Anyway, so yeah, let's talk about it. Kind of what kicked it off. What did you see?
I don't know. I have no idea what kicked it off. I guess probably the living conditions of the Palestinians are what resulted in a retaliation, I would think. The old kicking people out of their, ancestral home. Like their family's been living there for hundreds of years, and then they come and be like, "Hey, so this site right here is important historically to the Israeli government, whatever. It has some historical significance, so you got to get out." And then, like 2 weeks later, they come back, and there's a Jewish family living in that home, just living there in their home. It's not like they got paid for that; they just had to leave. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like here where if they do like I forget what it's called, but if they they come in and they get say like eminent domain, they're like, "Hey, we got to have this house, we got to have this area right here because we're going to build something here. We'll give you some cash, but you got to go." Right? They don't even give them cash. They're like, "Get out, figure it out. Sorry about you. Go live somewhere else."
Yeah. I think there's a lot going on. I definitely think it was more than that. Obviously, that's been going on for decades.
But I mean, it's just it's the apartheid state. It's the they are doing an ethnic cleansing.
So if you recall, Alaska was like the mosque there on the Temple Mount This isn't a picture of Alaska. And if you recall, it was something along the lines of...
That is what set this off.
Of the... blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so basically, if I recall correctly, there was a group of Israelis that went into the mosque and like started praying there, which is against the, I think it's called the status quo agreement with Jordan. And the parishioners, if you will, or whatever they're called in Islamic terms, you understand what I'm saying, took issue with this because the Israelis aren't supposed to pray inside the Islamic mosque. And at some point, like, it escalated, and then security forces were called, and they were firing tear gas in the building, and then the building like caught fire, like. And then Hamas launched several rockets, right? There was a huge rocket attack after that happened, and the mosque was on fire.
Yeah, during Ramadan.
Right.
Yeah. That'd be like on Ash Wednesday if somebody bombed a Catholic church. For perspective.
Yeah.
Like, huge day.
Not like a Catholic church, but like Notre Dame.
The Vatican.
No, not the Vatican, because the Vatican's more like
Or the
Mecca.
Notre Dame. Yeah, like a huge, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that'd be Mecca.
Because I think it's technically the third most holy site in Islamic faith.
Yeah.
It's not number one.
Yeah.
It's number three. It's number three over here.
Still pretty big.
It's still a big deal, right?
Pretty
Obviously.
big.
It's huge. I mean, there's what, 1.7 billion Muslims in the world? And the third most important holy site to all of them? Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. So anyway, so then Hamas started launching their rockets, and then Israel started attacking the Gaza Strip, which was unrelated to the mosque at first. And yeah, lots of people died in the airstrikes and the bombings and the rockets and the everything else that happened. So,
but like, I think the difference though is like this could have been way worse. But I think the difference this time around versus 2014 or I guess it was 2014 the last time they had any kind of significant activity was the amount of media attention or media coverage or just like people with cameras and putting it on the internet of what was coming from the Palestinian side, like how it actually was. And so I think there's a lot of political pressure coming from America and like saying, hey man, I don't know what's going on, but this is not a good look. And so I think that's kind of where, like, maybe he it's not like he got real pressure from our politicians, but I think from the mob, I guess, it just wasn't it wasn't like all pro-Israel rah 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 like it has been for the last 30, 40, 50 years. You know what I mean? Because it's like we had a whole lot more info. We had, you know, we had we could see it. You could see like, man, hey, this isn't as one-sided. This is not as like Hamas definitely the terrorists. You know what I mean? Like it's a pretty bad look for Israel as well. So, because I mean, who's terrorizing who?
Let's look at this, and I'm going to use CNN as my source here. So here's what the Israeli guy says. says they convened. We accepted unanimously the recommendation of all security elements and blah, 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 to accept the Egyptian initiative for mutual unconditional ceasefire that will go into effect at an hour to be agreed upon later. Now, that hour was like 2 a.m., right? What I don't see here is that there was like one more rocket attack after that happened. I think their Iron Dome was effective in shooting all those down, though. Yeah. But it did happen. Yeah, so 4,000 rockets into Israel. Most were intercepted, but not all of them. Yeah, so they blew up a lot of houses. But this is what they say they were targeting, of course.
What does it say? I can't read it.
Oh, sorry. It says the Israeli Defense Force, meanwhile, have carried out a devastating aerial bombardment of Gaza, targeting Hamas's vast tunnel network and other infrastructure. Some 72,000 Gazans have been displaced, UNICEF said Wednesday.
Yeah, but there's nowhere for them to go. Like, that's the whole thing. Is like, regardless of what the ultimate outcome is here, like, there's nowhere for these people to go because they're encroaching more and more and more on Palestinian territory. And so the places where Palestinians can go are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And so ultimately they're going to be driven out into surrounding countries. And that's really, from what I've seen, that's really what the Israelis want. Like, they want
to turn the Palestinians into the Kurds.
Gone. For them to no longer, like, they want an ethno-state, like, you know.
They want to turn Israel and Gaza and the West Bank into, like, they want to turn the Palestinians into the Kurds. People without a state.
I don't know what that means. Yeah, essentially. There's no Kurdistan.
There's no Kurdistan. Yeah. Speaking of people who've been horribly persecuted, well, no, that's another matter altogether. I was going to bring up the Armenian thing I showed you.
Oh, yeah. With the stakes, the heads on stakes.
Well, yeah, the helmets. Helmets on stakes. Like the dead soldiers' helmets on stakes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like,
I don't know,
1400 AD. Yeah. And you're Vlad the Impaler. Crazy person.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that one because I want to bring attention to that one. But as far as the Palestinian and the Gaza thing, I don't know. I think I've heard the arguments from both sides, and at the end of the day, I don't know what the right answer is, because, you know, I've made the argument before that land cannot be stolen. It simply is. And it's up to the people living there to defend it from other aggressors. And we can, you know, make moral arguments about rights of conquest and all that other stuff, but that's human history, man. It's only been in the last 70 years that's like stopped.
Yeah.
And it's the UN agreements after World War II that like stopped all that, right? And the fact that like a military power could police the world. So
that's us.
That's us, right? And I made the comment to you that like Israel is to the United States what North Korea is to China.
Yeah.
And because of that, and what I mean by that is that they're the little brother that messes around, picks a fight with everyone else, but nobody can really mess with because then Big Brother's going to kick their teeth in.
Right.
Right? And then, you know, the two big brothers are trying not to fight each other because that's the end of the world kind of deal. Like, mutual destruction between America and China right now.
Yeah.
So then you have the other factors that come into play with the economic warfare and all the other things, but, you know, Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So Israel's been doing its thing, right? And on the other hand, Hamas was founded after the formation of Israel, with the intent of the idea of the destruction of the Israeli state. Like, that's their whole goal. That's all they want out of life. And you know, it's tough to like say, for me, like who the bad guy is today when this has been going on for another 70 years, right? Like, I don't.
Well, you can back it up further than that. It's been going on for
Thousands of years, right? But I'm talking about specifically Hamas and Israel. Now, you could go Muslims and Jews and take it back way, way further. Yes, absolutely.
Hamas was established in 1987, so not that long.
I know there was a group that was formed after the formation of Israel after World War II. Maybe
There was
changed their name or something, but
Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. I'm trying to see. 1970s. With its takeover of Gaza after the 1967 war with Egypt, Israel hunted down Palestinian Liberation Organization factions. So that's probably the PLO. That's probably what you're talking about there. But that
like
was,
later
yeah,
became.
So that was the organization founded in 1964 with the purpose of the liberation of Palestine through armed struggles. So it was recognized sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. Yada yada yada. That was the PLO, the Palestinian. Yeah. Gaza. Filing Hamas. So, in 1987, several Palestinians were killed in a traffic accident involving an Israeli driver. In the events that followed, a Palestinian uprising against Israel's West Bank and Gaza occupation led Yassin and 6 other Palestinians to found Hamas as an offshoot of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood. The new group was supported by the Brotherhood affiliated charities and social institutions. It's an acronym, Hamas. And so I don't know what it means, though. I'm sure it's.
I found something. I was doing the Wikipedia thing, and I followed this link to a book. Let's see here. Every Hamas member I spoke to emphasized the fact that the colonists are Jews is immaterial. It's not about the Jews, it's about the liberation of the homeland from an occupier who happens to be Jewish. However, the textbook children use when Hamas run schools and consistency of anti-Jewish diatribes that fill the media suggest otherwise. Israel constantly invokes provisions of Hamas's charter that call for the elimination of Jews and the destruction of Israel and its refusal to recognize the state of Israel. This recognition, Hamas argues, must come from the state of Palestine, not from political parties. Hamas may continue to adhere to its non-recognition position. What the state of Palestine might choose to do is a different matter. I was hoping to find... Yeah, that's just the source that's available. West Bank interviewees agree that Hamas should become part of the PLO, the authorized organ for conducting negotiations with Israel. So PLO stopped being militant, and Hamas came to be. Kind of what that leads me to infer.
Right. I'm just saying they've gained power due to the occupation of Gaza, due to the Israeli occupation. And so when people are being pushed around, what are they going to do? Eventually, they're going to revolt, and things are going to happen. You know what I mean? Like it's an inevitability. Like when you self-fulfilling prophecy when you're like, they're going to attack us, so we have to put the hammer down on these people because they're going to attack us, and so you put the hammer down, and then that hammer that you've put down on those people causes them to be pissed off and then attack. So I don't know. In essence, you did it to yourself. That's the kind of the way I look at that. Like, I mean, in fighting terror, how many terrorists have the United States created? Because they're fighting the war on terror.
I don't think they needed help. I mean, the fact of their existence was enough for some people.
Yeah, but not maybe not as many, maybe not as powerful.
I mean, Iran's been funding it for forever.
Iran's been funding what? Terrorism?
That's all right. Yeah, 100%.
So do we. So do we.
So specifically against Israel. That's what I'm saying, though. So I mean, it's not a matter of
we
them
funded
attacking
specifically
something.
against Yemen. So now what?
That's
We funded specifically against
war,
Libya.
genocide.
Yes.
But that's not what we're talking about.
But I'm
So the
saying,
whataboutism doesn't matter.
I was just giving you an example. It's not really a whataboutism. It's just like, this is what happens. You consistently, when you consistently attack and attack and attack,
So
you get a retaliation. Then you get offended because of a retaliation. Then now you're mad and they're attacking us. Now we have to destroy everyone. That's bullshit.
That's how that goes. That's human nature. That's how it's happened throughout history. That's unfortunate.
That doesn't make it right, Rob.
No, it doesn't.
That doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right. But that's human nature, and so that's literally what you're arguing against. It's like you hit me, I hit you back, and then somebody dies, right? Like that's like, unless things can like calm back down, right? And on state levels, that rarely happens.
Yeah.
You know, but the other difference is that America will fund anybody, whoever they feel like is in their national interest, right? The Iranians are funding one group for one purpose, and that's it.
That's not
Would
true.
you say that's a difference?
That's not true. Iranians fund lots of different groups. The Iranians are funding Syria and half of the terrorist groups over there.
Mm-hmm.
So
But they're all Sunnis. Or I'm sorry, the Iranians Shia, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think Iran's the one Shia state.
What I'm saying.
That's still one group. I mean, because they're not funding the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a Sunni group.
Yeah, they support various Iraqi Shia terrorist groups. They support Hezbollah. They support Hamas. They're giving money to the IRGCQF in Syria.
What's an IRGCQF?
I don't know. I'm just
Islamic Revolutionary Great Fund GCQF. I don't know.
Yeah, they're all Shia in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
So, do you remember, and you may remember better than I did, but in 2001, the guy Ariel Sharon was running around Israel, and he had gone in to that same mosque and like tried to lay the first brick for a Jewish temple. Does that ring any bells?
I don't remember that.
Yeah. So I pulled this up. This is Wikipedia, so I think it's fairly comprehensive, but again, like, take it with a grain of salt, right? So what this is the suicide attacks. And you can see it was pretty random here. People unhappy. PLO. Hamas. PLO. And then 2001, which is where Ariel Sharon did his thing. This happened. And the next year, this happened.
Yeah.
And hear this. And about here, is where they started like building like walls, unfortunately. And then it was much less. Now again, some of those conflicts subsided and everything else. I just thought that was interesting. Because I mean, that timing ties in directly with the 2001 shenanigans that went on there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's... If the Israelis hadn't been granted those lands, and they basically tried to colonize them, like, that's not right. Right? I think we can agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I don't think that supporting groups that don't believe that they have a right to exist is a good thing either. Right? Like, there's no real good guys here.
No. I think that's my issue. Is that there really aren't.
Like there's innocents, is where there is.
And the innocents are the ones taking the brunt of the fallout.
Yeah. But the other thing I was thinking about, and this is kind of a messed up, like, wartime view, right? If you've got, I don't remember who exactly said it. I want to say it was like it might have been an American general, might not have been. Might have been a Russian, for all I know, right? But it was a quote from a general. And it was something along the lines of, like, if the enemy I'm hunting goes and hides in a school and expects to be safe, then they're fools. Because they know I have the capability, and all they're really testing is my resolve. Do I have the resolve to take them out no matter what? And over the course of decades, I believe that Israel has shown they have the resolve to blow up their enemies no matter what. And so for Hamas to continue to hide amongst civilians, all of those deaths after that are on them. Because Israel's resolve isn't going to falter.
But
they're going to take those sins. They're going to take those sins.
But how do you know that's like this? Take the AP Al Jazeera hotel that they were staying in, for example, or their office building.
Mm-hmm.
That bombing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there actually any real evidence other than, hey, we said it?
No, and I honestly I don't really care. Like I said, Israel probably considers Al Jazeera a foreign intelligence group and would blow it up just for that.
But the AP was there as well. It's not
Yeah,
just Al
but
Jazeera.
again, so are you
But
testing their resolve? That's the point,
no,
right?
who's testing their resolve then? Who is it?
Well, they
So
said
that,
Hamas.
but it's not Hamas.
But you don't know that. You don't know that they were there any more than I know that they weren't. Or you don't know that they weren't there any more than I have that they were.
No evidence. There's no evidence. And if there was evidence and there was like actual stuff, they would have presented that. If it was evidence, they would have said secretly to the Associated Press, "Hey, I understand what you're going through. You know, we gave you an hour notice. Here's what happened," and then given them the evidence.
Why
but they
would
didn't
they?
do that.
Why
Why
would they?
wouldn't they? Because then they don't look like assholes.
Right, but they don't care.
Because they
No,
do.
and they don't
though.
care. They don't
wouldn't
care
have-
if the
they wouldn't-
Associated
they
Press.
wouldn't-
They don't
yes,
care
they
about
do.
Al
They do
Jazeera.
care. They do care because they wouldn't have. You wouldn't have already had a ceasefire. They do care. They need that support.
Mhm.
They have to have their. They have to have that support. They do care what they look like on the world stage. Understand that. They wouldn't put out so much propaganda if they didn't care.
Mhm.
How much propaganda does Israel pump out constantly about how they are in the right?
So even at its worst, right? Even if I say you're right on all of this stuff, and they blew up this news building, did they do it as retaliation against the news organizations for not putting out the news that say was favorable to them? Is that what you're going with?
Possibly. Possibly.
Here?
I don't know. Yeah, because they're in there in Gaza,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and they're not putting out what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't want the news organizations in Gaza, because then that gives them a real idea of what's actually happening versus the propaganda that Israel wants out in the world.
Yeah. Maybe. But the thing is, you and I don't get to know. So whether they were there or they weren't, at this point, is immaterial. I think
It's not immaterial. I think that's the point. Is it's not immaterial.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that's the thing that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is they can say whatever and there's no proof and you just accept it.
I don't accept it. I just don't care. Like, that's the thing. Like,
Why don't you care though? Like why don't you care enough to where that's acceptable? I guess.
why didn't you think that it mattered what China did? So the same ambivalence that you cared when I was complaining about China,
Like, what do you mean?
where you were just like, how does that affect me? How does that affect my daily life? That's kind of how I feel here. Like, yeah, it's messed up. I don't necessarily like it.
$3.6 billion a year comes from our tax money into Israel. That's how it affects our daily lives.
Right, and what do we get out of that?
Protection for oil? I don't know.
Sure, that's good enough reason.
It's not. We have enough, like I said the other day, we have enough oil in the United States to support our use for the next 100 years.
So then why is it $4 a barrel on average? Or $4 a
Because
gallon on
OPEC
average?
Because OPEC sets that price, not the United States.
That's false. That's
That
a
is
false
not
statement.
false.
No. That's
not.
not true.
Who sets
What
the price?
gas prices shot up
market.
in the country from national shortages. National
Right,
specs. OPEC can set the price of a barrel
So
a
my-
day, right? For
Here's
their
why
oil.
that's
And
bullshit.
they control like what?
So when
60% of all world
when
shipping?
Nobody was buying gas, when nobody was traveling for however long, right? During the pandemic, they were firing people because there was so much oil out there and nobody was consuming it, and so the oil companies were laying people off because they couldn't produce more.
Do you remember
Now the problem is once you've dug in, you've got to keep pumping but there's nowhere to put it, and so they were running into issues with the oil production because nobody was consuming. But once you tap that reserve, you've got to pump it out. But they were laying people off because nobody was consuming it because we had a lot. There's nowhere to put it.
So it's not necessarily a shortage, but it's more a matter of getting it from point A to point B then, right?
Is it that though? I'm telling you, they, like you said specifically, why use ours when we can buy theirs?
Yeah. So if you don't have access to yours, or you're not being granted access to yours, then there's a shortage when it's not coming from overseas. You might as well not have it at that point. If you can't use it. If you can use it, then it does become a matter of transportation. Because you got to get it from wherever Wyoming is underground somewhere. I don't know. But again,
yeah,
that
OPEC could force prices to rise and thereby theoretically enjoy greater profits. Each member countries sold on the world market buying rate. Yep.
So now we're going off in the weeds, and to reiterate, it's the I don't have a dog in this fight, like between Israel and Hamas. And for the fact of the matter is, like, you can complain about the $3.6 billion, but I mean, 3.8, whatever it is that the right number? No, camera froze.
Yeah, it was like $38 billion
for like 10 years
or something like that.
Yeah.
Over 10 years, 38 billion.
Yeah. So A, it buys us an ally in the Middle East, and B, they wouldn't exist without it.
What wouldn't exist without it?
Israel as a state, without United States support,
Israel
would not exist.
That's true.
Which you may say is a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I don't know, right? But without U.S. support, it wouldn't exist.
I don't care.
Yeah. But you care about
because
the bombing of one building, but not about
a
whole group of people in a whole state existing.
Civilians. I care about the civilians.
Well, they told the civilians to get out. So they're still alive. They didn't have to give that warning.
So then what did they destroy?
They didn't.
They couldn't have got out in 1 hour. Was there some sort of tunnels? Proof.
Sure.
I want proof.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're a liar, and you're full of shit. And you just did it to move or do something untoward towards the press that are in Gaza that are reporting accurately. That's the part you don't like.
Like I said, if they see Al Jazeera as a foreign intelligence asset, that's grounds for destruction.
That's not Hamas, though.
So maybe it's all the same to them. I don't know, man. I'm just spitballing here to be a devil's advocate, but I mean the point of the matter is that, like, it's not favorable reporting for Israel to have Al Jazeera there. Obviously.
Just because it says Al Jazeera and it's in the Arabic language, and so therefore they're foreign reporters. That's what you're going with? Like the name of the news network is Arabic.
They don't print anti-Israeli news all the time. Is that what you're going with?
They don't.
You want to pull this up here? Here's pro-Palestine. Here's blowed up Gaza. Hey, here's more displacement stuff. Here's how evil
what
Israel is. This whole front page is how evil Israel is. This whole front page
What are you gonna
is
show?
how evil Israel is.
Show me the picture of Israel being blown up. Show me.
Well, I'm not going to find it on Al Jazeera, so give me a second.
Show me the picture of Jerusalem being blown up.
Which one?
What years are those from?
Oh. Let's see here. Hold on. Tools. Time. Past week. Oh, there's past week. There you go.
So that's at that mosque.
Let's see. That's the mosque. This is... Apparently they're saying that's an airstrike, according to the headline.
That looks like the Al Jazeera hotel, that one picture you just pulled up.
This one? Or wait.
No, the previous one. No, back up one more. That looks like that hotel explosion.
The hotel explosion.
Yeah, I think that.
There's a little map. There you go. West Bank. Israel. Gaza.
Yeah, it's very small. Anyway, okay, I'm done talking about that. Let's talk about wages.
Oh, Lord. Okay. Wages. Let's talk about how the lady went to go get to McDonald's and she had the sign outside on the drive-thru that said, "Hey, please be patient with those people who showed up to work today. No one wants to work anymore."
Yeah. Hey, you know what happened? So this little ice cream parlor, I think in Georgia, they advertised their wages at $15 an hour and had over 1,000 applicants in a week. So maybe it's a you problem. That's where I'm at. I think it's a them problem. It's an employer problem, not an American worker problem, not a labor problem. There's not a labor shortage. There's a wage shortage.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the reality is that what the pandemic has shown us is like a couple things. One, this country cannot make it without frontline workers that get paid shit wages. Country can't survive. This is a consumer nation. We consume. We don't really produce. We consume. And so when you don't have people at the storefront, companies and economies tank.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people are realizing the power that they have that they didn't realize that they had before, and they're not going to go work for crap wages. And so that's why people think that there's a labor shortage. There's not. There's just people's not going to go work for $8, $9 an hour. And so the market is doing what the government couldn't, or what they decided not to do. Thanks, Joe.
So, because the government supplemented extra money and the market has to make up the difference to pay more than the government's giving, it's a market correction.
Is it really though? So
I'm asking. That was my question. That was a question. Sorry.
So the government, I don't know that it has anything to do with that, but let's say it does. So let's say that the government, yes, is paying in more than what they should. And they're introducing so much more money to the market, and people are finally like being able to pay their bills and whatnot, that they haven't been able to do prior.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then yes, there's a market correction based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of like, oh, so you're not going to pass $15 an hour minimum wage, here we're going to force you to. We're going to force you to pay it.
One of the things that I've seen recently, and it's only really hit me like in the last couple days even. So with the pandemic and everything, and the way that people were behaving and the way that business were operating, nobody was building houses, right? Have you looked at the housing market lately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's I don't know that we call it a shortage, but there's definitely a ridiculous increase. My house that is 2 years old has already gone up $100,000.
Yeah. The house that I'm living in now is worth way more than it should be, right?
Yeah.
For a house in a small town in Texas. It's according to Zillow, it's worth more than it has any right to be, right?
Yeah.
And I think some of it is this right here. This is the price of lumber in a commodity market.
Mm-hmm.
So since April to April, obviously it hit a low point in the previous April. So we'll go 2020, January here. It's 405. At the beginning of the year, that's 100% boost. So that's 873. And in the last 4 months, since January, it's gone from 873 up to 1,600. And then back down to 1,300. So it was a 400% increase, and now it's back down to 350-ish, 300% increase from January 2020. That's ridiculous, by the way.
Yeah, I agree with that. So what's the reason for that?
Honestly, that one I'm not sure, because lumber isn't exactly a like it wasn't an affected market, right? Like it you know, the guys who go out and chop trees in the woods or whatever, like they ain't worried about the pandemic. They go into work, right? Like meat, like they're in manufacturing. They're in an area where something has to be produced for them to make money. So I'm not 100% sure what is causing that, and I haven't read enough about like give me one sec. Pull this article up.
What are you looking at?
Found a Forbes article.
Okay, I'm looking at this other one.
But
So it says the initial slump was a product of the global shutdown in response to the novel coronavirus outbreak. Construction operations in most locations were shut down, and lumber mills and other processing facilities were left with an excess supply of material. So you're wondering what caused lumber to increase from roughly $250 per 1,000 board feet to over $850. This is old. Seeing some of the lowest interest rates in recent history of the past few months in the U.S. as a response to the fragility in the economy. So low interest rates for both home mortgages and new construction led to a boom in the building and remodeling industries when business opened their doors in June. So basically they shut down production for a minute, and now they're struggling to catch up because the demand is really, really high. People got, you got your stimmy check. You can finally put a down payment on a house. You can come up with $10,000. You can get an FHA loan for a first time loan, right?
yeah.
So if you get $5,000-$6,000 for your family on a stimmy, come up with another $5,000, you can buy a house. And so now people are in that position where they're like, hey, we can afford, you can finally buy a house. Let's go buy one. So houses in that, 300, 250 to 300 to 350 house range are like, they're on the market for a day and they're gone, like, because people are finally able to afford houses. That's my that would be one of mine. And then you couple that with historically low interest rates, people want to buy, so they are.
All I know is I can't get a fence built now.
Right, you're waiting on that.
Yeah. I've been waiting on that for like 6 years now, so I have no right to talk.
I gotta buy the materials to build the roof on my shed, man. Anyway, back to wages. You're getting me off topic.
So I'm going to relate this. I'm going to tie this into wages. Let's talk about. So cool. Everybody's making $15 an hour, right? Mm-hmm. Why is that coinciding with the? I don't. Maybe you're right on something where everybody's got their money, so everybody can go buy a house, right? Does it coincide with the rising wages, as you say, is the forced $15 an hour, where the price of creating these goods is the same, right? So say it costs so much money to go run the lumber mill truck, right? Well, let's use that as an example. Or to take a cow to make it a burger, right? And one cow can maybe make, 1,000 burgers or 2,000 burgers, right? So you got a cow, it costs so much money to get it to the market, and then that cow produces 2,000 burgers. If it costs me more to get that cow to the market, then I'm going to charge more for the beef. And if I charge more for the beef, then you're going to pay more for the beef. Mm-hmm. And so what used to cost you $10 at Whataburger for their deluxe super burger or whatever, now might cost you 15 or 20. Because it cost me more to get it there. And every step in between is a piece of that pie, right? So your buying power from the money that you're sitting on in your bank with the price of consumer goods that is going on right now, your buying power is less than it was a year ago.
So here's my counter to that. Productivity in this country has increased from the 1980s 280 to 300%. Right? Mm-hmm. Maybe 250 over the last 30 years. That's the money that's going into those. That's basically essentially profit, right? Mm-hmm. If you're increasing the productivity, you're increasing your profits. Yes?
Sure, yeah.
If wages rose with the rate of productivity, right? Not excluding the increase in costs, excluding all of those things, right? If we go at the rate of productivity and wages, the pay rate right now should be $23 an hour based on that. Mm-hmm. Now.
But is that... Hold on, time out. Quick question. That productivity numbers is the amount of goods produced in this country? Or correct. Is that productivity number... What is that based on? I'm just curious.
Let me look it up. Let me verify. I know what I'm talking
and the reason I ask... Well, I'll let you tell me the answer. Wait.
Productivity. How much workers produce per hour?
That's okay. So it's an overall general Bureau of Labor Statistics number or something like that? Okay.
Like how much you're producing per hour, how much more efficient you're being.
Right. So was all of that the workers, or was it industrialization, modern technology, computers, and everything else? Because Because okay, so we'll say that humans have always made machines to make our lives easier, right? We created a plow so we didn't have to till the fields by hand, and that was a game changer. And then things like the cotton gin.
But you're still talking about the labor producing it.
I'm
So
talking,
regardless of what innovations have been made, right? You're still having labor produce a good.
right. So anytime that I build a machine anytime I build a machine to do a job, and I can reduce headcount, fire people, lay people off, whatever you want to call it, then I have fewer workers to do at least the same amount of work, so then my productivity goes up, right?
Right. So pay should increase.
Then sure, yeah, because now you got to have skilled technologists to work on the equipment, right? Sure.
Correct.
I agree. Yeah. Except as we know it with Ford assembly lines, like that didn't happen, right? It was stand in this line, do this thing. But again, back then Ford paid living wages to all their employees. His motto was people should be able to buy what we produce, right?
Yep.
I guess my basic premise is like profit in and of itself is not a bad thing.
I think it's theft.
I don't. I think profit is an excellent gauge on whether or not you are successful or not in your business venture. It's the open market, the market accepting of your business model, right? Of your product, of your whatever it is. And whether you're making a profit or you're not making a profit, that's your measure of success right there. It's a very cut and clear and cut and dry formula for are you successful as a business.
But the fact of the matter is, if wages are a cost of doing business, and so they cut into your profit margin. Yes?
Sure. Overhead.
Okay.
Yeah. Gotta pay the overhead.
So wages is just overhead. So in order to, listen to me now, in order to have a profit, in order to produce any kind of profit, you have to pay a laborer or your employee less than what they are producing, less than what they are worth, in order to have profit, because that wage or that cost eats into the profits. So there has to be some form of devaluation to an employee in order to make profit, because you're not paying them for all of what they produce. You're paying them for a portion of what they produce.
Let me explain to you how I justify my job. Right? So I get paid a pretty good sum, right, as an engineer. And every year, on the year, I fill out a report. And part of that report is basically, it's two things. So, one, have I made enough changes and upgrades or other things to justify my salary? Right? Am I providing value to the company? And two, did I do good enough to ask for a raise? Right? Every year. Like clockwork. And so I look at the projects I've done, and I really try to target about 10 times my salary. Right? Because we're talking about big, heavy pieces of equipment that cost a lot of money to repair. And so resolving one fix, one downtime, one issue that's repetitive is fairly easy to justify that kind of raise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I save the company, say $1 million, in your mind, I should be getting all that money for myself, or whatever team I had working with me. We should be able to divide that up.
Yes.
To just take all that money. What is the money for the next upgrade then?
So you as your team could potentially decide, let's say we saved $1,000 on X, right? Mm-hmm. How much would the next upgrade cost? Because you already had to pay costs into that, right? Yes?
Well, $1,000 ain't going to buy you anything in an industry.
Did I say 1,000?
Yeah, you said 1,000.
Oh.
So you ain't going to fix shit with $1,000 until
you saved $1 million. Sorry, right, $1 million. Yes, save the company $1 million. how much was that thing that like the initial cost of that thing that you saved $1 million on?
We'll say 100,000. Just round numbers.
Okay.
I made a decision. It cost us $100,000 to implement this thing that saved us $1 million. So you had a 10 times return on the investment.
So you and your team of people could say, "Hey, we'll set aside 200,000. We'll split the 800,000 between us. Done." And then you can move on, because you're going to have costs of doing business. That's normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to have money in the bank to do business, to run a manufacturing company. You can't not do that. But if you take the profit motive out of that, and that just goes to employees, well, they wouldn't be employees, they'd just be workers, right? You can still set aside money for maintenance. You could even set aside money to say, we're saving this for upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
You have maintenance money, you have upgrade money, you have advancement money, you can have money for R&D, whatever you decide. But that money's going back into the company, not into just random person's pocket.
Mm-hmm. You know, we both watched that Richard Wolff and Destiny debate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on that?
So he was terrible, Richard Wolff, and I like Richard Wolff a lot. Like, I've watched his lectures, and the things he says makes a lot of sense. But he was not very good in that debate. And Destiny is a rhetorician.
Say that again.
He's a very good at rhetoric.
Oh.
I don't know what rhetorist.
Rhetorician, rhetorist.
Anyway,
whatever.
He's,
yeah.
Huh?
Hi. You cut off. Hi there.
I'm saying his rhetoric style and his style of debate doesn't really match up with Richard Wolff. And so he's really good at, like, I don't think it would matter what the topic was. He's a really good debater. And he makes a lot of people look stupid, just in general. Like, even people that are, like, pretty smart, he makes them look dumb.
Yeah.
But there was one thing that, like, he said over and over that Richard Wolff was, I don't know if he just wasn't hearing or wasn't paying attention, was he was saying, what is the motive for investment into a worker co-op? And to me, for a worker co-op, you wouldn't have a traditional style of investment where you buy shares of the company and you get paid dividends.
Like, it wouldn't be a publicly traded company because it's all privately owned by the workers, right? Yeah.
Well, to me, if you're not doing labor, you don't get money in a worker co-op. Like, that's the whole idea. So the idea that the only way you can do an investment is to do a loan type of deal where you say, hey, I will give you, $10 million for your startup worker co-op, and you pay me back 15 or pay me back 20, I double my money and move on.
Over the course of 30 years or whatever.
Right.
So whatever,
right.
Yeah.
And so you're still making an investment, and you're still, getting your money or whatever. But
yeah.
It's a different. I don't think the traditional investment, I collect dividends, I make money on the stock market, capital gains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that works in that style. So you can still do individual investments, but if you're not doing labor, you don't collect on the company.
Except for the bankers who gave the loan out or whatever. So I think Destiny had an important point where he mentioned that is like, who signs the loan, right? Do you get everyone in the company to sign on the loan, and were they all fiscally responsible for paying back that loan?
Yeah, it would have to be, because it would have to be,
right?
because it'd be a collective that's.
So you hire somebody in, and you're like, all right, well, here, sign this paper.
Yeah, and then if you default on the loan, then the collective, every individual person would have to get sued or whatever.
So what happens when I don't know? There's a lot of particularities I could ask about, and just try not to get into that. So, I mean, I think that's probably the number one holdup right now, because like as he pointed out to Wolf, there's nothing stopping that right now, like in our economy.
But one of the things that I found interesting, that he kept hitting on over and over, was when right now the only person that protects the investor is the SEC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the corporations have a fiduciary by law responsibility to do their best to make money for their investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a law. And the person that or the entity that holds that company's feet to the fire to make a return on investment is the government, is the United States government. And so why wouldn't it be the same? Because it's not out of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not morally, it's not the person's morals that's making them produce a profit, right? It's not something that that they, just want to do
CEOs
just because
want to
it's
make
the
money
nature.
too, right?
It's the nature of. I mean, that's why people go to jail for investment fraud and embezzlement and things like that. There's a reason these people are going to jail, and it's because the law is what holds those companies responsible.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, those businesses want to make money, and the boards want to make money because the boards are compensated through stock options. And if the stock goes up, they make a lot more money.
Right.
So that's even if you go to the basest of human desires and say, oh, they're all just greedy assholes, they want to do well because it benefits them. And another thing is that, sure, some companies exploit their workers, but I don't know. I think you can only exploit people for so long. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but
I think that's part of what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
is that people are waking up and realizing that they don't have to accept that.
Yeah.
That you can't continue to guilt people into taking a crap wage as their American duty.
It's not guilt. I think it's a desire to eat. And the thing is that it has nothing to do with guilt. I don't think anybody feels guilty for not showing up to their job at Walmart, right?
That is what is trying to happen on the media that I see all over the place. You watch,
Sure. I'll give you the media, but I'm talking about an individual who works at McDonald's, doesn't feel bad for not showing up to his job at McDonald's, right? I worked at GameStop. I didn't give a damn if I didn't show up, right? And the thing is, I didn't even quit because I hated the job. The manager just couldn't give me a schedule within an appropriate time frame. And his expectation to me was hey, you need to call in every day to see if I wrote you in on the schedule. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. You're the manager. You make the schedule. This is your job. Managing people is a difficult job. And part of that management is writing the schedule. That was his job, and he couldn't do it. And so I just no, y'all call me, whatever, I don't care. I just stopped going, right? I didn't care. So I know how it is to work on something like that, where you're I do this job, I need some money, whatever, it's fine. I've worked those jobs. You don't feel guilt for not showing up. Sure, the media can try to guilt you for it, but you don't really feel anything.
Some people do, though. There are people that take that work ethic type of thing very seriously.
Yeah, they don't work at GameStop.
They don't work at GameStop.
No.
But some of them, some of those high schoolers, some of those younger people that are on the come up they do care. if you're the fact of the matter, the majority of minimum wage workers are women, adult women, adult minority women, um, and they need those jobs.
Mm.
They so they show up on time doing their job.
Right, but that's not
And
because of
so
guilt. That's because
it's
of a
because of need.
desire to eat.
But my point is that what you see on the media is the media trying to guilt people into being like, oh well, we should just go to help out our companies and help out our economy. We should be going to work, and they're being lazy and they want to collect unemployment rather than going back to work. And it's no, no, they don't want to get paid peanuts anymore. They're
Mm-hmm.
done with that. And so if you're not willing to pay the people, they're not going to come to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to try and get rid of the unemployment plus up. One thing I said, like in the thing that I said the other day on Facebook or whatever, if an employer offers somebody collecting unemployment their job back and they turn it down, they lose unemployment benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on?
So a lot of that, if the person like on unemployment continues to like issue resumes, I'm pretty sure they can prove that they're applying for jobs and retain that. But maybe I'm incorrect
if
on that.
if you collecting unemployment, you either got laid off or you got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or you quit under exigent circumstances. So that's the only way you can collect unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and that goes through the employer. The employers have to pay some type of unemployment insurance into the state because that's part of the deal when you hire people. Because the state pays unemployment, so companies have to pay an unemployment tax or insurance or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have somebody that you fired or laid off, and then you're trying to come back and now everything's opening back up, and they say, okay, through the labor board, you tell the labor board, hey, I tried to hire this person back in that worked for me that's collecting unemployment right now. I tried to hire them and they turned the job down. They were working for me before. I'm trying to hire them back to work again, and they turned it down. That person then loses unemployment benefits.
So
You don't get to keep those.
How long does the company continue to pay unemployment to an individual? Is it like 6 months?
No, it can go on.
It's not
Usually, well,
indefinite.
no, it's not indefinite. So I think they've extended it, but I mean, you're at a year and a half right now.
Mm-hmm. We're at about a year. Well, it was March, right? When they first 15 days to slow the spread deal.
Yeah.
March of last year.
Yes.
Right. So. I don't know. I do know that a
I
friend
looked
of
it up
mine
last night because I was saying those things, and I
who
wanted
does
to make sure that I
hiring.
was not lying.
I do know that a friend of mine who does like hiring stuff like has hundreds of resumes a week with like no contact information for
Or
callbacks.
faulty contact information.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because when you go on unemployment, you have to prove that you're spending X amount of time searching for jobs. You have to prove that you're spending, you send in X number of resumes per week in order to collect that check.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I can see people doing that. I can. But also I can see people that have found if you have been making minimum wage, I'll just say, and all of a sudden you have like X amount of dollars now, from unemployment or whatever. Most people that are collecting unemployment didn't lose minimum wage jobs. Those people went somewhere else and went to work.
Yeah.
I can only, anecdotally, I can only tell you what I see here in Texas. Basically, when people lost jobs, Home Depot was hiring, Lowe's was hiring. There were places around that were hiring, and so when they lost their jobs at the restaurant, they went looking for work. It wasn't a, oh well, I lost my minimum wage job at McDonald's, and now I'm gonna go
Eat
kick it.
Cheetos and sit on the couch, right?
That's not how that went down. Grocery stores were hiring like crazy during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people are Uber drivers, Uber Eats and DoorDash and things of that nature. They kind of went crazy.
Blue Apron, Sunbasket, all those other companies that do like home delivery for groceries.
Yeah. And so I'm telling you, people went and looked for work. And so now those people went to look for work elsewhere because other industries were doing quite well. The people that are want to work minimum wage jobs, they're not going to work for minimum wage because they're making more now.
Mm-hmm.
My son makes 11 being a ride operator at a theme park.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wouldn't go work for $7.95.
No.
The other son, who's still in high school, hasn't worked for less than 10 since he was like 15.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to go get a minimum wage job. Why would he go accept $7.25 an hour? He wouldn't. That'd be dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that half of the football team works at Walmart, and the Walmart locally here is paying $15.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That was news to me when they told me that. But they were all really excited about it. Half of the football team works at Walmart. I don't know what they are going to do during the season because we're going to require them. We're going to need those guys
Walmart's
back.
going to have to bring in the scabs, replace them.
I don't know what they're going to do, but they all work at the same one.
Shoot, man. They're all going to be like, man, this money's good.
Yeah, no. Because it's still $15 an hour. It's not.
What is that?
I mean, some of them we might lose one or two, but most of the kids we lose, and this is pretty crazy, is most of the kids that we lose are the Hispanic kids that go to work for their parent, doing construction, doing skilled labor jobs, and they tend to have to help their family.
Yeah. So, check my math. So $15 an hour is about $30,000 a year, right?
Roughly. Yep.
Roughly. What's the cutoff for the taxes?
What do you mean?
Well, I know that like at a certain income level, it's essentially untaxed, or you get all your refund back, right? Like if you make less, or is that like 12,000, 12 or 15?
So it really depends.
Taxes?
No, it really depends. Typically, if you're under, it depends on what your write-offs are, how many kids you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, I've got 5 dependents. I don't pay net zero, but I'm pretty close to it. Just because of my write-offs and dependents and whatnot.
Right. Well, yeah.
And I'm well over 30,000.
Yeah.
But I think the poverty line is 24,000.
24.
Which is crazy because minimum pay for a teacher in the state of Texas is 28,000. You have to have a degree to teach in Texas.
Yes, you do.
and so you pay state minimum. That's $28,000.
And like
The poverty,
like you said, like 5 certifications.
yeah, the poverty
Minimum?
line is 24. I think that's right. Hold on, I might be wrong. What's the amount?
So in the short term, you don't see any.
Oh, so no, for a family of 4, it's 26.5. For a family of 1, it's 12,800.
Yeah. For the poverty line level.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah.
And if you have 1 kid, poverty line is 21.9.
Is that for one parent, 1 kid?
That's
or
3. 3 people in a household.
Okay.
1 parent, 1 kid is 17.4. Which is that's crazy.
It's interesting that the. No, okay, so that makes sense. Never mind. I was thinking of it backwards. So with all this going on, I guess, and I know, like, I've worked for minimum wage. I've worked for more than minimum wage.
You know, I never have.
Never did.
Not once. Like when I was a kid, minimum wage was like 5.25.
Oh yeah.
And I was making. I made $6.50 at Fossil, and I made $7.25 at the at the bra store. They couldn't get rid of me. I was making more money than anywhere else, and then even at Subway, I was making $8 an hour.
Oh, shit, I forgot you worked at Subway.
I was doing well. Huh?
I said I forgot you had worked at Subway. Was that in Lubbock?
Nope, that was in Hillsboro.
Oh.
That was a second job to supplement working at Fossil.
I know. I walked off my minimum wage job and went and made like double my money working for a guy the next week.
I've only walked off.
Building fence.
I've only walked off of 1 job, and it was in college, and I went to go work at Abuelos, which is pretty good little Mexican restaurant. But I got hired on as a busboy, and they said, okay, come in tomorrow or whatever. Wear white shirt, black pants, and you're coming to work. So I've never been a busboy before. They knew this, and when they hired me, so I wasn't really sure what to do. So I cleaned the tables. I walked around with my little busboy bucket, and I was cleaning tables, and then it was dead for whatever reason, and so I did the chips. I made the chips up in the bowls and did all the things right, and then I was just kind of standing there. I didn't know what to do, right? And so the manager comes around the corners and sees me standing there and proceeds to rip my head off. Just starts chewing me out. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, yeah, nah. I took off my apron and handed it to him. I'm like, I didn't know what to do. Nobody's talked to me the whole time that I've been here. Nobody said what I should be doing. You just came in here and yelled at me. I'm out. Done. And I was there for 3 hours and quit. I was like, I don't know what I was supposed to be doing. Nobody's told me anything. I've got no training. I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And when there's nothing to do, I know how to clean off a table, but
there's no tables to clean off because you have no customers. So why are you yelling at me?
So yeah, I quit. I didn't know what to do. So yeah.
You're just like, whoa, I'm not prepared. Here, you can have a bag.
Here's your apron. I don't want to do this. There's no reason for me be yelled at. But I didn't know that the restaurant industry was like all guys like that, like super high tension, crazy.
I was fortunate that I worked in a different kind of restaurant. We had this little Spanish lady that was the floor manager, and then this giant Hispanic fellow was the head chef. And she was like from Spain, right? And so she would get super excited and start yelling at you in her Barcelona accent. Not yelling, but just like fussing at other people. She liked me because I was like young and in college, and I think she was kind of like into that, right? So so she was nice to me, and I like
into that.
Well, I mean, also she didn't have to correct any of my orders, so she was happy about that, right? So like I'd been there for like a month or two, and they were giving me like the big tables, and the other more experienced waiters were getting pissed off, and I overheard her like how many order corrections did I have to do for you last week? 15. He didn't have any. He gets the table. Go do your job. I was like, that was pretty funny, but I actually liked that job. That wasn't too bad. I never want to do it again, but you know, something about waiting tables and the way I perceived it was too much like roulette and trying to live off of other people's generosity. It's just kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, that's why they should get paid a living wage too.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of funny. You've been to Europe before. They looked at me crazy when I tried to tip. Like, I was sitting having a drink in, I think it was Paris, and I had a little euro left, and I was like, here. And they're like, no. And they gave it back. I was like, huh?
No, you don't want the money?
All right.
Yeah, the British pubs that I went to, they didn't have a problem taking my money.
Oh, really?
No, they were like, oh, we love Americans here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the British pubbies I went to, they didn't have a problem.
They were not ashamed to
They
take
were
your
not.
money.
They were not too proud to take my money.
I think they get paid. I don't know what they get paid, but they get paid like the normal wage or whatever.
I have no idea. I mean, in this instance, it was probably like the pub owner who was just like running the whole thing.
Mm.
So he was just like, yeah, I'll take your money. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please. So I don't know, man. I have concerns. Like, I hear your arguments and I understand them. I really do. I get it. Like, it's like, what I don't think is a good thing is it's almost like you know what a command economy is, right? I don't need to explain that. And how they suck kind of deal.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly like that, but it kind of has some similarities where instead of the government necessarily dictating what's made, how it's sold, how much it's sold for, and trying to make all the decisions for a market, and it's incredibly complex, and there's no possible way that they can make all the decisions for every industry and every business and every manufacturing sector, right?
Right.
So instead, they've said, all right, we're going to all pay this much. So all of your overhead for every business is going to go up by this much in order to employ people. Because if you don't raise your threshold, we're supplementing the income enough to where that you don't necessarily you're going to get people to come work for you.
Well, that's
so if I play this out in my head down the road, right, we're seeing increases of 30% milk, 20% beef, 400% lumber. Maybe that's not entirely connected to all of this. Maybe there's other factors for the lumber market. But for like milk and other things like that, food sources, I don't necessarily think that's the same, right?
I guess my problem is that when people equate a rise in wages to a rise or a rise in costs of goods, because that's not the labor's fault. It's not the labor's problem.
No,
Okay?
I think it's
so the market
falsified reaction, right?
the market people will pay what they can, right? People will buy what they want, and so they'll make decisions. If milk goes up to $4 a gallon, people will either not buy it or they'll buy less. Okay? So, I mean, yes, there's going to be inflation, but it's not a matter of for me, the wage increase just cuts into profit. And for too long, employers, business owners, corporations have done everything that they can to keep that cost low to increase their profit. The productivity has gone up 250%. We just talked about that. They're producing more and more and more. And they're selling more and more and more. They wouldn't produce it if they couldn't sell it. The wages haven't gone up with that production. They haven't gone up with inflation. Profits have increased 100, 200, 300, 400, 500% in some cases. But the wages haven't. The only thing that hasn't gone up is wages.
Let me ask you a question, because I just considered this. So, over the last 30, 40 years, right, Americans lost how many manufacturing jobs net? I don't know. Would you say it's probably in the hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. So then, is that all just a factor of the increased productivity, or is it a factor of factories leaving? Like, are there multiple factors involved in that, you could say?
Yeah.
So
you have automation, you have outsourcing, you have lots and lots of reasons.
So again, because of all of those factors, that productivity number doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
Okay.
Right? Because, again, for the last 30 years...
Then just go off of profit then.
So for the last 30 years, America has been a service economy, not a manufacturing one, right? At least in the last 30 years, probably a little bit longer, right?
Probably less than 30.
Since the 90s? You don't think so?
90s is when NAFTA was signed, and when that's when it really started outsourcing all of the jobs.
Okay. So, 20 years then. We could say that NAFTA, so 15, right? NAFTA, I think, was signed in 94, 92, 94, somewhere in there.
That's when they really started, like, closing down, shipping out jobs, etc.
Yeah. So again, like I said, because of all of that, the productivity numbers I don't necessarily put a whole lot of stock in that, right? Like, I get it, I understand where it's coming from. I don't think it means what you're saying it does.
I imagine that's an American labor number, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I don't know, like I said, maybe I just need to look into it some more, but I see 100 factors that could all be the case for why this is increasing. And most of them have to do with technological advancement.
Sure. You don't think it has to do with people working more hours, doing more?
Take, for instance, the place where I work, right? We create, so for a single train, I'll just use my old plant. I knew a lot more about it. So at the old facility, we made 10,000 pounds an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, round numbers, you could sell that product for about $1 a pound. It was a very expensive product. Like $1 a pound is a lot for this plastic, right? So that equates to roughly $240,000 a day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I could increase that number to 11,000 pounds an hour, right? That's $250,000 a day. It's $10,000 every day extra that I get. If I can increase it to 12 or 15, now the people on the ground aren't necessarily working harder, right? We're all still doing the same job. I got to go out and turn the same valves. I go out and work on the same equipment, but we've done some things to like debottleneck, increase flow here, increase things here. You know, we've done some work and we've pushed out more pounds. So now we're up to 15,000 pounds an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not necessarily working any harder to get that. But the productivity numbers look great.
But you specifically did the things to increase the productivity.
Sure.
That's the point. Is you did that.
Mm-hmm.
You and your labor and your teams of labor were able to get that increase.
Mm-hmm.
The owner of the company didn't come down. The stockholder, the CEO, didn't come down and fix that. You did that.
Mm-hmm.
That's your labor.
So would we have done it without their direction?
Huh?
Would we have done it without their direction?
Yeah. Because if your job is to make your factory more efficient, then yes.
Yeah.
If it can make, let's say you take a portion of whatever increase that is, like you have a portion of that money, right? So if you're producing 10,000 and you know that if you get it to 12,000, your take home off of that would be $10,000. Let's just say you don't think you'd have the drive, the ambition to go and figure out how to make it more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting a portion of that.
Oh no, I absolutely would, and that's, going back to the Richard Wolff Destiny debate, right? There's two very important things that I would like you to understand, right? First off, I don't inherently hate the idea of the democratized workplace, as they're calling it. I have a lot of issues with how it might work and what its functionality is, what its reality is, what kind of outcomes would be different, or those are very serious questions that I have about those things, right? I don't inherently hate it, because at the end of the day, I want to do well for myself, right?
Right.
Everyone else does too, right?
Yes.
So the issues I think that are most critical that Wolff didn't answer, right? Things about either A, capital investment, which you've already touched on. How do you get the money to start your business? Are you going to have some sort of violent takeover to disallow the owner class, as they like to call them? Or is it going to be done through legislation that makes it more difficult for traditional hierarchical structures in a business place to operate, and streamlines like the co-ops or whatever else? Like, what is that going to look like? Because right now, under the current structure, no one feels comfortable about giving that kind of money to a group of individuals, right? If it's one person and one individual that I can hold personally responsible for this loan or this investment, or they go from an LLC to an IPO, those structures are in place.
Right.
And none of the structures for funding are in place right now for what you're talking about. This idea of a democratic workplace, right?
Yeah.
They talked about Mondragon, and I have no idea how they got started, right? Like, yeah. Did a union take over an existing business? I have no idea, right? Like, I've done no research on that company.
But I think that in Spain they did have like a Bolshevik-esque revolution, and I think the Union did take over that business because it wasn't that long ago when the Russians came in and tried to help, and then weird things happened. It was a weird deal.
Yeah.
I think
Well, like I
this is
said, in this country, I have no idea what that would look like, right? And so, is it going to disallow private investment? Is it going to reallocate structurally where the money is, like, again, through means of force, taxation, whatever? Like, what is that going to look like? Because those are things I don't agree with.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is like you already have a lot of taxation and money that just goes to business just to go to business. I mean, you've got,
Oh, I think business subsidies should be absolutely killed.
800 billion in the PPPs and the trillions to prop up the stock market, stimulus.
Yeah, I don't like any of that. And the only people who need subsidies, and I'm sorry, you're gonna not like this, but are the farmers, because no matter what, we gotta eat.
I agree with that.
And that's about the only thing I consider too big to fail, right? Water industries.
And I don't think they do that right. Well, there's a reason we have so much corn is because corn is subsidized so heavily that farmers have to produce it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, if I grow corn, then I collect an extra $100,000 this year, whatever else per bushel, or I don't know, something ridiculous. But
I don't think we do that. I don't think we do that right.
But it's even more disturbing, is that most of those farms nowadays are corporate owned.
Oh yeah.
I think less than 10% are privately owned farms now.
Yeah.
In the United States, everything else is owned by a corporation.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
So,
trust me.
Now, whether or not that's a bad thing, I don't know, right? Is there a better way to do it? These farmers were struggling. They sold the land throughout, 100 years of this.
Well, it's so expensive to farm. I've kind of looked into some of that stuff. The equipment for farming to produce, to be competitive in that market is so expensive. So, yeah. And now anymore, I was reading this whole thing on the John Deere tractor stuff. You can't work on your John Deere tractor. You have to take it in. If you do something and you modify your John Deere, apparently they can go in and shut it down remotely.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. That whole market is nuts. And so a lot of them
just buy Caterpillar. What the hell's wrong with these people?
I'm telling you. But even you own that machine outright. So why couldn't you work on it as you want? And so
Have you heard of Louis Rossmann?
No.
He's got a YouTube channel. He does a lot of fix it yourself stuff for Apple and MacBook. Because of his focus on Apple and MacBook, Apple has sued him multiple times, and he has gone to court he's got a whole movement on right to repair on his stuff, and you might get a kick out of him.
Yeah, I'm gonna check into that.
Yeah, so he does all MacBook repairs. Hey, here's how you fix the broken screen.
I might be into that.
Yeah, I feel like you might be into that. So
what's his name again?
Louis Rossmann. Louis Rossmann. Louis. I don't know.
How do you spell Louis?
Hold on. I'll
L-O-U?
Nah. Louis.
Rossmann with an O.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he's just like a repair tech, but he's done legal battles in the state of New York and everything else against Apple, and yeah. I firmly believe in the right to repair your own stuff.
I agree. Well, they're trying to get a right to repair passed in I think it was Indiana or Iowa, one of those two states, for the John Deere stuff. And John Deere was fighting it like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between, do you own something or do you not? And if they want to do something about, like, hey, we're not going to honor our warranty, fine, whatever. This thing's been out of warranty for the last 10 years, you know. But the ability to go in and shut it down,
yeah, it's messed up, right?
Crazy. Oh, I mean, I'd rip the computer system out.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, there's a guy who is like, he's leading the charge for the right to repair, and he's figured out how to hack into it. Yeah, disable all that stuff.
It's like these things are all computer generated, and there's no company that's smart enough that can create an unhackable system. Like, it's just.
But you need the GPS, because the GPS will keep your lines straight.
Like, yeah, the GPS is how you track your lines. Yep, across like large amounts of fields. Because like trying to eyeball that thing in this giant machine, like, you gotta understand, like, these gens are as big as your house.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And anyway, yeah. So we talked about. Yeah, no. So getting back to the bigger point of all this was no business should be too big to fail, and in fact, that kind of goes back to my point about profits are not necessarily bad. If a company can't make profit, or if they're doing illegal stuff, they should go under, right? And that's kind of what that, like, you know, I sent you the thing on that Hindenburg research, right? And, you know, they had a nice little write-up on, like, why puts and short sells are a good thing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's the market correction for bad business.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like, that's all it was ever supposed to be, right? And so, you know, if companies are abusing it,
no, I get it.
All like GameStop.
I mean, I understand the necessity. Do what now?
I was saying, if companies are abusing things like market tools and everything else, like again, there was a lot of things on the that I disagree with on Destiny, just from his personal philosophies. But economically, I think he's on point when he says, like, capitalism is only a tool, and the market is only a tool to get to where we want to be on the outcome, right? And if you're going to show me something that can have a better outcome, like this market democracy or whatever else you want to call it,
workplace democracy.
Workplace democracy. Yeah. If it gets me as good or better outcomes, then cool. But to be competitive in today's market, I mean, apparently from his claims that Mondragon uses non-owning labor, right? They're subcontracting out different work groups that are not owners.
Yeah.
Just to be competitive. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues and questions that I have about this thing, but I'm not inherently against it. It's just not something that's been shown to work. And if we try to force it in, I think it'll have dire consequences.
Well, that's why I think it's going to have to happen organically. So you need some form of contract. You know, if you had an investment, you'd have to have some form of contract. Then you would need somebody to default on that contract. Then you make laws. You know what I mean? Like, it have to be. I think there has to be a sequence of events that lead up to writing legislation for how those interactions take place. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it could happen otherwise. I don't necessarily think you have to have defaulted loans? Because apparently this is a
I don't
huge
know.
talking
I
point
feel
on
like
the left, right?
I feel like people are, especially our Congress and legislation is so reactionary and is so reactive instead of proactive in trying to, um, make things better. They're like, oh, this is terrible. We should probably do something about that, rather than, you know, saying, hey, I foresee this coming. We should be ready for that. We don't do a lot of that. You know what I mean? So I think in order to have legislation for worker co-ops and things of that nature, you would have to have a series of events happen to where you would need those laws. I don't know if that makes sense. So like somebody would have to invest into a worker co-op and then sue every person that was employed there, every person that was part owner. You know what I mean? Like I think that would have to. I think that's how that would have to go.
Is that like a reverse class action lawsuit? What would that
Yeah,
look like?
I think so. I think that's what that looks like. I was gonna call it a class action lawsuit, but I was like, that's not really what that is.
Kind of the opposite of that.
It's kind of yeah.
Like I got one investor suing all these people, these 30 people who signed this contract. But that's another thing, is that I think that the workplace democracies will have a hard time finding people to sign on to that contract. Because, I mean, shit, I was skeptical at joining like a credit union, right? Like I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, a bank can't like come in and take my house if they don't own a stake in it. They can't come in, but the credit unions can come after you for everything. Which is why you have to make smart financial decisions, and not default on a loan if you're going with a credit union. Sure, there's benefits, but I mean, you have to make that choice. But even still, I'm like, man, what if this happened? Like, what if I was hurt or injured or dead, and then I've got all my money tied up here? Like, it was a real decision. And so now you're going to tell people that, like, oh, by the way, you're going to join this business, and you're financially responsible if you fail. And we all know that 90% of businesses fail that are ever started.
Be a lot more, what do you call them, bankruptcies.
Yeah. And so it's like, is that going to produce better outcomes? And just looking at the face of it, I would say no.
So I understand where you're coming from, but also I think if your employers have employees or the workers have a vested interest in the outcome, they'll find a way for it to work, versus one dude trying to make it work and pay people when he can.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like take Bluebonnet Construction. Is that the name of the company?
Mm-hmm.
Would that have done better under that style? Do you think?
Yes. 100%.
Is that just because your boss was an idiot, or
no?
No.
It's just because when we had a big like windfall of cash, I didn't really care. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it didn't do anything for me. Like, yay, okay, I'll just go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because I didn't have anything. I mean, I was just an employee.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't really. I wasn't invested, so I don't really care.
No.
If the company goes under, meh.
I'll find something else to do. It'll be alright.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
Like it.
So you would have cared more had he made you a partner and not
an employee.
An employee.
Yes.
Right, because then you have ownership. No, that makes sense. Would it have saved the business?
there are parts of me that think yes, because there was money spent unwisely that should have stayed in the business coffers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and then when we got into a pinch, that money would have been there where it wasn't.
So it was just I think there was a bad business decision made.
In my opinion, yeah, there were several.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So if everyone's voting, and they still all vote against you, the company still goes under then.
Then you can get out if that happens. So if everybody votes against you and you think it's the bad move to do, then you can leave. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
just like a normal business.
Right.
Yeah.
If you say this is not the way to go, I'm out. When y'all failed, and I'm not getting sued. F y'all. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No. Yeah.
Cash out type stuff.
Yeah. Y'all buy me out.
Yeah. So,
it would almost have to go like that, would it?
I would assume so.
Like
buy me out.
If you own the shares or whatever stock in your company, or do you have to buy into the company when you hire in?
That part I don't know. I haven't really figured that part out yet.
Like, to get this good job, do you have to have $15,000 up front?
I don't know. See, that's what I'm saying. I don't know how that works. Like, that's one of the things that I need to read more on, and how that works is how you get hired into a company like that. Do you have to invest in the company to get hired on, or do you automatically, when you get hired on, you're like, okay, you get X percentage? Like, how does that work? Your vote counts for this much.
Man, it almost sounds like an old trade guild.
Good morning, baby. I'm probably gonna have to cut it short.
Yeah, that's all right, man. Do you hear what I said?
Huh?
I said it sounds.
Thank you for watching this episode of BroPartisan Hacks with Reese and Rob. We really, really appreciate you watching, tuning in. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to us. We're putting out content as often as we can. Share it with your friends. Get it out there. Get our names out there. Also, hit that bell, tap that bell right there so that you can get updated when we put out a new video. Rob and I are trying to pump these videos out as often as we can. However, we both have day jobs, we have families, so our schedules have to line up so that we can make a new video. Speaking of our day jobs, our opinions and views expressed are our own and in no way represent those of our respective employers. Thank you. Thanks again for watching.